Today we're going to start our unit on Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. So I have some questions for you. Do you believe that there should be limits on self-expression? Agree or disagree, or somewhere in the middle? What do you think? The society of the future will be better than the society of today. Agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle. Past cultures should be preserved and valued. Agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle. The benefits of modern technology outweigh any possible risks. Agree, disagree, somewhere in the middle. The rules of society should never be questioned. Agree, disagree, or somewhere in the middle. So, what do you think politically unacceptable is? By this I mean unacceptable in a society. What do you find? What kind of behaviors, what kind of things are unacceptable in society? Write your answer for me. So let's talk about the historical setting for Fahrenheit 451. It was written in 1950 and was published in 1953. 1953 was right when TVs became accessible for everyone. So this was where we started having a TV in every house. Before that, we didn't. We had radios. Bradbury was a teenager during World War II and had become horrified by the Nazi book burnings, as well as the aftermath of the war and how the United States sought a war and elimination on communism. We'll talk about communism some more in a minute, but first let's talk about the Nazi book burnings. It's important to define propaganda. Propaganda is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view, as in he was charged with distributing enemy propaganda. Propaganda is really important in this book because not everything you read or believe in the setting in this book is true. So, information of a biased or misleading nature used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. So let's talk about the Nazi book burnings. I'm going to show you a little bit of a video, and then we're going to talk about it.
Books represent humanity at its best and its worst.
To burn books is simply a fundamental repression of ideas.
I mean, what can a book do? And why is it so dangerous that it needs to be physically annihilated?
Whoops. I want you to think about that for a second. What can a book do that it needs to be annihilated or destroyed? What power does a book have? So, as soon as I can get my play button.
In 1933, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, called the Nazis for short, came to power in Germany and established a dictatorship under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. The Nazis intended to rearm Germany and to reorganize the German state on the principle that the German ethnic group or race was superior to all others in Europe. They suppressed all dissent within Germany, making it a crime to criticize the regime. The newly established Ministry of Propaganda and Enlightenment set up various chambers to control specific aspects of German culture, such as art, literature, theater, film, music, virtually all forms of entertainment and all forms of dissemination of news. In 1933, in April, Nazi German students decided to organize a nationwide book burning program to eliminate foreign influence, purify German culture as they saw it.
So you have committees of students meeting with professors together, deciding what categories of books in these university libraries would count as un-German. They didn't see themselves as suppressing culture, they saw themselves as advancing Aryan German culture.
I remember very distinctly a conversation between my parents and some friends who were all shocked that a nation like the Germans, an educated, highly intelligent nation, would burn books. Books never hurt anybody.
The event that the students planned occurred on May 10th, 1933. In each German university city, 34 of them in all, thousands of people gathered together at a public place in which books that had been confiscated either by the students themselves or by Nazi party officials, often with the help of police, were brought and dumped in a pile. Student leaders exhorted their followers and the listening crowds to swear an oath by the fire to destroy and combat subversive and un-German literature.
For the national treason against our soldiers in World War I, we're burning Hemingway's books.
Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister himself, spoke at the book burning in Berlin.
It is amazing to me the variety of books that was burned on that night and thereafter.
Among the authors whose books were burned were Ernest Hemingway, both Mann brothers, Thomas and Heinrich.
There's the German writer, Erich Maria Remarque, who wrote the famous book All Quiet on the Western Front.
Helen Keller.
Jack London, the American nature writer. There's very little that unites all of these books, really, except that they were all considered dangerous by the Nazis.
So let's talk for a second about what this means. Germany had a ministry, they had an office who's in charge, who their job was propaganda. Their job was to make sure that the news only reported things that they wanted them to report, that movies that were released were only pro-German and pro-Nazi, that books that people were able to read they weren't dangerous, as they said. They didn't have anything that would go against what the government wanted people to believe. What that means is they harnessed information, and they only gave people the information that they wanted to. Now, were there people who fought against this? Of course. The rest of the world was fighting against this. But at the same time, the German government were able to control the citizens by use of propaganda. So, and this didn't just happen in Germany. It's happening now in places like North Korea, where the government can control the information that its citizens receive. So Ray Bradbury saw this happen. And he saw the speeches where people said the future German will not be a man of books, but a man of character. And Ray Bradbury, number one, was very concerned with that because he is definitely a man of books. But number two, saw this as the downfall of the future. That if people stop reading and start trying to find the easiest way to get information, that it will be the downfall of the American society. And so that leads us into what was happening in the 1950s. So Joseph McCarthy was a senator. During the 1950s, there was a Cold War between America and the USSR, which is now Russia. And the regular American people, they were afraid that Russia would bomb America. They were afraid of Russian spies. So if you remember reading Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, it was the teleplay about a neighborhood who thought aliens had come to their town, and they turned off all the power and they made the cars not work, and they ended up blaming each other, saying somebody in our neighborhood told the aliens they're working with the aliens, they are an alien. And first they blamed one of the neighbors, and then they blamed the kid, and in the end they ended up killing one of the neighbors, and it completely devolved into mob mentality, a mob of people blaming each other. If you remember, that wasn't really about aliens. This is what it was about. It was about McCarthyism, because during the 1950s, when Rod Serling wrote that, there was a push in America for people to report someone they thought might be a Soviet spy. And so people were watching their neighbors, and if your neighbor stayed up all night talking on a radio, they might be a spy. They might be somebody working for the Russians. They might be somebody working against America. And there were advertisements asking people to turn in their neighbor if they thought that this was happening. That's what Monsters was about. But that's also what was happening during the 1950s. So this was another push for Ray Bradbury as he was writing Fahrenheit. This idea of spies and turning on your neighbor. So there is a movie. Here's the deal. The movie is very much not like the book. They leave out whole characters. If you watch the movie and expect to pass, you will not. Okay? But even though it's a bad movie, it's a decent trailer. If you would like to watch the trailer, I would encourage you to do that. But from here on out, we are going to read Fahrenheit 451.